But speaking about potentially having to live down bad takes, let's get into our tips for round 7 of the AFL season. This is one where both, like I mentioned earlier, both Don and I are writing off a little bit of a tipping high from last round. We both went 8-1. You got the Crows and the Doggies game wrong. I got the Freo and the Carlton game wrong. Damn you, Blues. I was so close to greatness. I'm so proud of my Adelaide Crows take. So, like I did a little bit of teasing earlier in the show, so it's time to fulfill said tease. I will scratch the itch that I gave you guys. But the first game that we got here is going to be the West Coast Eagles and the Richmond Tigers. Richmond, not great. West Coast, even worse. Are we going with the best of the worst?
I'm going to go Richmond on this just because the West Coast, they're still... I believe that many of the issues that they're running into is more of people coming back from COVID, actually having COVID, than people having to sit out for COVID protocols. And I think that's kind of the thing that's been a big talking point with some people should we be able to find out whether they actually had COVID or not, which again, that kind of goes against your medical, whether you should be able to spread medical information or not. So again, I understand it for pundits, but it is kind of a thing where it is a privacy thing. So I understand the health.
There's going to be a journalist that wants to get their hands.
I'm gonna tip Richmond. I don't like the mojo of the West Coast Eagles right now, but I'm gonna say it. This is a West Coast Eagles team that once they get kind of back to normal, and again, I air quote this a lot, then they are going to be a team that is going to scare a lot of teams in the finals because they're going to be a 16th, 17th, 15th rated team that can beat any finals team because they've got a lot of experience and a lot of talent. So I'm going to tip Richmond on this one just because I still don't think West Coast is there yet. So I don't think they're back to that kind of 85 to 90% that I think then they'll be a team that'll be dangerous. So I'm going to tip Richmond on this one.
This next one, I'm not, I guess, too surprised by the percentages, but I am surprised by the betting odds on this one. We got the game that, like we said earlier, we are going to be live streaming this one over on our Twitch channel. So Twitch TV, twitch.tv/fourthlongmedia. It's on our website, thefourthlong.com. Just go there for everything. But
we'll put out the link.
Exactly. Follow us on Twitter, all that good stuff. But it's between the Geelong Cats and the Freo Dockers. 84% of tipsters are going with the Cats. I'm not too surprised about that. But we got, the odds is $1.29 for the Cats and $3.63 for Freo. So sizable underdogs in this one. I'm not sure if I agree. I am going with the Cats, but I could definitely see Freo pulling this one out.
This is one of those legitimately.
I went back and forth.
I looked at it. Well, no, I looked at this one and I went, where this game is played is gonna depict my tip. Legitimately went, this game is at GMHBA, or if it was in Victoria, even if it was up at the MCG, I'm gonna tip the Cats because the travel sometimes bothers Freo. But if it was in Optus Stadium, legitimately I would tip Freo. Legitimately I would tip Freo because I think Freo plays Optus Stadium so much better. I think the Cats can play Optus because it's a lot like the MCG, a little bit better than some do. But I would still, so this one's where I'm going to tip the Cats because it is GMHBA. I think it fits the Cats style a little bit more. But this will not shock me. Not shock me a bit if Fremantle wins this because the way Freo is playing right now, they're defensively smothering. They don't give up a lot of points. They're so good defensively. They're starting to find their ability to kick goals, which is dangerous when you can keep teams from scoring and you can score more than you were last year. That was
take
really
a look at Freo last year because one of their big things, Freo would have been a lot better team if they could kick straight. It was a running joke that I had each game that, oh wow, They kicked so many. They got their behinds kicked because they were just horrible in putting it through the two middle poles that you're supposed to. But luckily for them, Donnie, I believe what Frio did over the offseason, they put their nose in their literature. They read the rule book. They're it's the middle ones that are 6 points, not the outer ones. We'll kick it through the middle, and look at them. They're amazing.
Well, and you look at it, how many times last year did they kick more behinds than goals? And that really
more than half the time, right?
Games.
More than half.
Well, you kick 10 behinds, and you take 5 of those behinds. That's you're talking 24 points more per game. If you kick 5 more goals than you do behinds, because you go from just getting 1 point for a kick to 6 points, you're adding an extra 5 points per every extra kick that you get.
Don Hess, resident calculus expert.
Simple math. It's plain and simple math there. So but
I like those numbers. I can count them on my hands.
I can count. Yeah, okay, but no, I'm gonna love this game. Like I think it's the reason why I love. Surprisingly, for such a great game being on at a decent time over here in the States, I cannot wait because this is going to be champagne footy.
Yes.
I think this is going to be a classic. I think this comes down late fourth quarter. Like I said, I think the Cats win it, but if this was an Optus Stadium, I would legitimately tip Frio Anthem.
Yeah. Now, this next one, if we want to talk about surprises, surprise to me is a GWS win. Now, this, it really wouldn't be the biggest upset of the round, that's for sure. It's probably going to be a closer game. At least I hope it's going to be a closer game than I pessimistically might be thinking. We got 82% of tipsters rolling with the Adelaide Crows. I don't blame them because offensively just all around they've looked like a real team. I'm going with them. At the Adelaide Oval, it's a good environment for the Crows, and I just have zero confidence in Giants.
I'm also tipping Adelaide, but this is one of those that I did have GWS at first. When I first started tipping this game, I tipped GWS because it's a prototypical GWS that they'll fall apart in a game against St. Kilda. Cameron will take them in, grab them by the scruff of their neck, shake them a little bit, go, come on, get your heads out of a body cavity. You really shouldn't be singing in front of people. And then they find a way to play a great game their next game. Like it's like it takes a few seconds for the message to fully assimilate into their brains. So I'm worried that this is an Adelaide Crows team that's now starting to get a lot of compliments. That do they overestimate a GWS team that everybody's going, well, they're 1-5, they're not playing well, Cameron's on the hot seat. I mean, this is almost a perfect storm for a young Adelaide Crows team to slip up. I'm going to tip the Crows in this one because, again, Adelaide Oval, I think it's going to be hopping. I think the Crows fans are starting to get up and about. They're enjoying watching footy. Tex Walker is playing out of his skin right now, which is absolutely fantastic.
I'm so glad he's back. He's amazing when he's on. He's so exciting.
But I'm going to tell you this right now. GWS winning this game will not shock me a bit because that's just the way this GWS team is. I don't know. They're an enigma at times. Because games that I think they should be much more competitive, they don't. And then in a game, I'm thinking they're down on confidence, they're down on form, and they pull one out. So I'm going to tip Adelaide on this one, but it will not shock me if GWS wins this game at all. Will not shock me a bit.
Yeah. I appreciate the confidence there. And speaking about shock, it's time for me to scratch that itch because we get to the Melbourne Demons, the Hawthorn Hawks, and if you, it's my one of the week. It's my one of the week, and I think I'm like 50-50 on this one, so it's not horrible. But we're going for it. We're going for it.
I love it.
Me and the other 4% of tippers out there, I'll let it ride on the Hawthorn Hawks. They're going to take down the D's, and they're going to give them the first loss of the season. It's happening. Let's get behind it. $4.35 as an underdog. Oh yeah, bet the house. Please don't take a betting advice from me. But yeah, let's let's go Hawthorn.
I'm going to tip Melbourne on this one. I think Hawthorn is still a younger team. They're still learning. I just think there's just a little too much talent, and I think Max Gawn is going to expose Max Lynch a lot like what Peter Laddams did. I think I'm interested to see how this one goes. Does Melbourne put put the hammer down, or does Hawthorn stay in this? Because I want to see that. Because if Hawthorn stays in this, if I'm a top 8 club, I'm much more confident that you can pull an upset on Melbourne if they stay close. If they pump Hawthorn by 80, then I'm a little worried, because now they're starting to play better teams. And if they pump them and beat them by 80 or 85, then I'm a little concerned. If they beat them by 15, less than 3 goals, if I'm a top 8 side, I'm going, okay, come on, Demons. I think we can beat you now, because there's a weakness that I don't think a lot of people expected. Now, Kazi Pickett's out. You got some of the injury. You got some of the COVID protocol issues. So will it be a full thing? No, but this is a depth Melbourne team that has so much depth. They're a scary team. Bailey Fritsch is still on there. Ben Brown's still on there. God's still. Petranka's still there. Oliver's still there. So I'm not as worried about them. But again, I kind of look at it is that is this going to show a little bit more of a vulnerability to better teams, or is this going to show that Melbourne is they're just getting into second gear and they've still got third, fourth, and fifth gears still to come?
This is going to be a perception, changer of either team on the line on this one, no matter what happens. So I'm super excited for that one. And now we get a stretch of 4 games where I really feel like there's only one answer to who we're going to tip there. Donnie, are you reading my mind as well?
There's only one in this little run that I'm
Gold Coast.
As I said earlier in the show, I'm still debating, and that's the Gold Coast Collingwood. I agree with you. I think St Kilda beats Port. I think Port is still not 100% there again.
Nope.
Lysette not being there still, I think, hurts this Port team. I think Alair has shown better. I think his matchup with the King, with Ben King here, I think is a much more favorable, or is it Max? I can never remember which one's on which. I'm sorry. The King brother that's on the St. Kilda Saints is playing out of his skin right now. Can Alair shut him down? And then can their young defense keep a Higgins and keep this really quick forward line in check? Carlton should easily beat North Melbourne as long as they show up normal. Again, how does the pit net injury affect it? Because Goldstein's still there, Giry's still there. So will Carlton have to start defensively to kind of counteract the loss of the bounce of the ruck contest? And I think the Western Bulldogs, yes, they're without English. Yes, they're without. I think they've just got a little too much. This Essendon team, but that's the other one. Like, if I rank it from most likely to see an upset, that I would go Gold Coast 1, and then I'd go the Essendon Bombers 2. I think that's the most likely upset. 3 would be Port Adelaide, St Kilda. North Melbourne would be the least likely to pull the upset. But then again, though, the way this footy season's going, you could see all 4 potentially win here, because there's a vulnerability on each. Port Adelaide's playing better. St Kilda has not. St Kilda, really, besides Freo, hasn't played elite teams yet. I think Port's getting better. North Melbourne, they're facing an injured a pit netless Carlton team that I think has shown some vulnerabilities defensively, and if they can get offense from Zerha, from Zeeble, from Jai Simpkin, from Goldstein, they could pull an upset there. Gold Coast, Witts is an incredible ruck. I think he can really put himself there. No Brody Grundy, I think, can even this game out. Gold Coast has got a very good shot. I'm going to tip St. Kilda, Carlton, Collingwood, and the Western Bulldogs. I'm going to tip the top teams. But Gold Coast and Essendon and Port are the 3 I could sit here and say it will not surprise me if they win it, with Gold Coast, Essendon, Port in that order of how I see potentially upsets there.
And the last one is the hardest one of the round.
Is a coin toss for most people,
horrible.
And that is Sydney Brisbane.
Well, it's a coin toss on the odds as well right now. If you're one of the tipsters, it's 52% to the Swans, and then obviously 48% to the Brisbane Lions. Dude, this is a tough one. Like, I'm going with Sydney because I've been riding with them on the season, so I'm just going to default to them. But man, if they're anything that we've seen from the last, if they play like they did the first half against Hawthorn, they're probably in for a rough night. If they play like they did the first quarter against North, it might be in for a rough night because Brisbane scores so fast. So it'd be hard to catch up if they need to. I don't know if you could get behind by like 3-4 goals against this Brisbane team right now and be able to come back.
And that is a great point. That I think the stumbles in the first half of games against Hawthorn and against North Melbourne, I think has got a lot of Swans fans, and has even got some pundits tipping Brisbane because of that.
I don't blame
I
them.
normally am always kind of I'm the eternal pessimist when it comes to my tipping. I hate tipping for Sydney. I tend to kind of play the double-edged sword. I tend to tip for Brisbane because then I can cheer for Sydney, because if they lose, I get the tip right. If they win, I get my team win.
It's like me and fantasy football.
It's kind of the having the cake and eating it too. I'm tipping Sydney
There's just
because
one
here's
cake
how
that
I
tastes
look
better.
at it. Here's how I look at it like this. Sydney defensively is still pretty good. Yes, you lose Paddy McCartan, but I think you've still got some backups that are coming that are going to be fine. It isn't the tall forward line I think a lot of people think it is. After McAdams and after Danaher, it's a lot of shorter players. It's the mid-sized Zach Bailey's, the small forward Charlie Cameron. So it's not a hugely tall forward line like some people are making it out. So I think if you bring in Sam Reed and you have Tommy McCartan will take Danaher, Sam Reed will most likely take Mistay, Cunningham will take Charlie Cameron, I think you've got a good enough defensive ability to be able to shut Brisbane down. The issue I see for Sydney may be, how does Peter Laddams handle Oscar McInerney? Because McInerney is a big body that tends to be physical. Laddams is a little more skilled ruckman, and he's faced rather younger ruckmen the previous 2 weeks and has dominated because he's facing guys that are not nearly as skilled as him, Max Lynch and then the young guy from the West Coast Eagles. Is his confidence up that he's going to go into this McInerney matchup and be able to perform as well as he has over the previous 2 weeks? If he does, I think Laddams gets around the field a lot better than McInerney. That's going to give him an advantage. And if they can win the taps, Callum Mills is playing well. Most likely you may see Josh Kennedy come in. You've still got the Warner. You've still got Blakey. You've still got McInerney. You've still got Rowbottom, a very young midfield. And Callum Mills can play a tagging role on Lachie Neale. And if you can take Lachie Neale out a little bit, you can kind of weaken Brisbane's midfield. So I'm interested to see. And then defensively, who takes Buddy Franklin? Does Harris Andrews? Because if Harris Andrews takes him, that takes away your intercept marker, because they have to be touch tight on Buddy, because Buddy is such a dangerous. And you've still got Isaac Heaney, potentially Papley coming in. Benny Ronk's playing better. And so there's a lot of matchup problems I potentially see. And again, I think I'm going to tip Sydney in this. I just think there's enough matchup wins for Sydney.
Okay.
They can win this. And being at the SCG. If this was at the GABA, I'd lean a lot more towards
one of
the
those
Lions. I think
where
the Lions played. Yeah. I think there is a home field advantage in this situation, because Sydney does play the SCG very, very well, and it is a different ground than the GABA. So I'm going to tip Sydney on this one. I'm going to buck my trend. Normally, I tend to tip a team like a Brisbane over Sydney, because just kind of the trends as I see. I think Sydney's playing really, really well. So I'm going to tip Sydney on this one.
Yeah,
but this one scares me as a Sydney supporter.
Oh, if I was a Sydney supporter,
this is a very good Brisbane team.
Yeah.
But I look at it as this potentially could be the other team with Fremantle in the talks around Melbourne as those flag contenders potentially. I mean, depending on what pundit you talk, there's some pundits that Melbourne's got this in the bag because the Western Bulldogs are not playing.
I'm not buying it.
And Sydney's vulnerable.
I'm not buying it.
Fremantle's vulnerable. Brisbane's vulnerable. But I agree with what some is that Melbourne hasn't played the cream of the crop yet, so they haven't really been tested as much this year as they did last year. Teams have kind of figured it out. They're going to have a year to look it up. Sydney's a young team. They're a year older, and they played Melbourne last year in a championship within 2 goals. So they're there and a year more experienced. I think Brisbane has tons of talent with Eric Hipwood still coming back. And I think Fremantle, if they're defensively structured, play as well as they do, they can match up and shut down enough of Melbourne's abilities. I think they're in it. I don't think Melbourne's as invincible as we kind of looked at. So that's why I'm looking at this Hawthorn game going, will we see vulnerabilities? Will we see a normal, non-Supermanish Melbourne performance? Or do we see them absolutely destroy them? So this is such a fun round of footy, because
great
this
games,
could really
Donnie.
tell this. This could really tell us who is what, because Geelong beats Fremantle. Geelong's right back in the talk of flag contender.
Fremantle
because if
beats
they beat
Geelong.
Fremantle, that's a top two. That's a top two side, a Fremantle team that's playing really well. And
Hawthorn
we
can
kind of
prove
see. So
they could become a pure, legitimate, more than legitimate team. They could become a Hawthorn. Donnie, the Hawthorn Hawks can become flag contenders, depending on results from this game.
Oh, I completely agree. Important. Hawthorn could stamp themselves into the finals
that sounds
if they
so
win
weird
this
coming
game.
from my mouth. Hawthorn flag contenders should not be in the same sentence unless there is a isn't in the middle of there. But it's 2022. Apparently, anything happens in the AFL now, so it's impossible. It's impossible to really know. That's what makes it fun. That's crazy. Imagine if North Melbourne beats Carlton. That's a bad look for Carlton right there. St. Kilda can keep rolling, or Port Adelaide might be able to get back in it. And I really do think, like your point there, the winner of Sydney Brisbane puts himself at the second best contender for the flag, to Melbourne, assuming Melbourne handled business against the Hawks.
Well, and the other thing you think about it too is that there's one opponent that they've both played, and that's the Geelong Cats. Sydney beat the Cats again at the SCG, and Brisbane lost to the Cats at GMHBA. So it's very fascinating. Again, if you kind of look at matchups, Sydney beat a team that they're playing against. So it's very fascinating. Again, so each and every game has a storyline that if it happens a certain way could change how we look at this, change how we look at the season. I mean, if you're right and Hawthorn knocks off Melbourne, all hell breaks loose, because then I think
that's
it goes
why
from,
I need to be right, Donnie.
I'm being serious, because even though they are missing Keziah Pickett and Luke Jackson, is that vulnerability shows, and every team is going to dissect it and try to do what Hawthorn does. I mean, Sam Mitchell, he learned from one of the best in Clarko. So if he does it, every team's going to dissect that tape to within an inch of its life to see how they did it. Now, if Melbourne just has a bad game and can't kick straight worth a darn, can't hit to the broad side of the barn, kicks only 5 goals, we'll know that basically if you put enough pressure on Melbourne and make him have a horrible kicking day, you can beat them. Again, we don't know. But then you look at it as who wins the Geelong Fremantle game and who wins the Sydney Brisbane game, because it could not only change the ladder, but it could change the discussion on who's that second best team on the ladder. If Geelong smashes Fremantle, Geelong's got a plausible excuse to say that they're right there. And then depending on Sydney Brisbane, I mean, if Sydney beats Brisbane by 2 goals, and Geelong beats Fremantle, many people would say that puts Sydney in the catbird seat as the number 2 team in the entire competition.
Donnie, we might get a new flag favorite by the end of this round. That's crazy.
We could have 3 or 4 teams fighting for the flag if certain things happen.
Right.
But and then again, it's how do the Western Bulldogs bounce back? Can Richmond get their form back? Because this is a perfect opportunity. You play a West Coast team, you got a chance to get a win. You get a win here, you could really bounce your season back into the way you want it. Same thing with Western Bulldogs. You've got a chance to bounce your season back on the right track with a good win going into your next round. So each and every round could potentially be your spark for the rest of the season. I mean, as a Sydney supporter, I remember 2017. They were 0-6 after the first 6 rounds. They reel off 10 wins in a row to go from 0-6 to 10-6 and in the finals.
It's possible.
So it just shows you one game, if done right, one game can spark you to 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row, and the whole ladder could change if certain things happen. So this is another round where the matchups are scintillating. I cannot wait for this, because every single day there is a game that I'm going, I can't wait for, because Friday night, at least here, Geelong Cats, Fremantle Dockers. Saturday night here, you've got a couple. Collingwood Gold Coast will be fascinating. You've also got Saturday early morning, at least here, is the Melbourne Hawthorn game. And then Sunday, 2 of them, the Western Bulldogs Essendon, which I think could be fascinating for the Western Bulldogs season. If they drop one to Essendon, oh my gosh, it's going to be fascinating watching the Melbourne media lose their minds if that happens. And the Sydney Swans, Brisbane Lions, the communication on that one is going to be fascinating, because if it's a close game, again, how is it interpreted by the footy media? Who's the better team? It'll be fascinating to watch that. So each and every game this round could be absolutely storyline-ish with how certain results could affect the season.
No, I'm super excited, and I came up on the fly with this line pertaining to the NFL draft when we were recording this week's NFL breakdown. And all I gotta say, Donnie, hell, I might even put this on a T-shirt, because this is my mindset for everything not related to my favorite teams. And fingers crossed for chaos, because that will make this so much more fun. I just hope that you know what hits the fan, and the whole. I hope Twitter crashes. I hope Twitter crashes just from the AFL community blowing up over some of the results this round. But would love to see your thoughts, and especially, can I get one person on my side when it comes to tipping Hawthorn this round, please? It's okay. It's a welcome 4% that you got here. Come join the 4%, guys. We'll love to have you here.